Cool. So let's get started. So I'm Andrew Cook. I'm the Salesforce technical instructor at Salesforce Ben. I'll be hosting the webinar today. With me, we've got Gaurav, founder and CEO of Vanshiv Technologies, and we've also got V, senior product marketing leader from Flosum.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for introducing us. So interesting results from the poll question is that a lot of folks might be new to some of these software delivery intelligence metrics and how do you achieve high performance. So what I'd like to do here is get started and start with a idea and a formulation and a question and understanding what is the state of affairs in your Salesforce development pipeline. And I think that we're starting to hear both senior leadership and folks that are in the weeds working is that the business is overall telling us that they're looking for a little bit of an evolution in terms of development where the focus is towards outcomes, connecting effort with the value being delivered. And then in our particular case around DevOps is everything is connected together, where traditionally the thoughts have been around increasing development velocity, but without quality amongst that development process, you are going to struggle to deliver these outcomes and connect it with the value that's being delivered to the business. So what is the business value around software delivery intelligence before we dive down into what it specifically is it enables leaders and folks that are involved with the development of software to be able to map the delivery of flow and what is required to create this, and ultimately establish a baseline. So it helps you understand both the manual, the inefficient, erroneous, and the bottlenecks that are happening as part of the software delivery process. This also allows leaders to balance opinions with data that can change and push through organizational changes that enable a much smoother flow. There are 4 metrics, and we'll get into these a little bit later, that enterprise leaders are using to be able to understand these, which is deployment frequency, the time to change, or i.e. understanding how long it takes to push changes into prod, the mean time to recover. So when something fails going to production, how long does it take you to recover from that situation? And then change failure. So how often are you deploying to production and then not having it deployed successfully? So this allows the transition of linking the application development with business value. So you can track the flow of value creation throughout the entire pipeline, and you can manage your expectations as a business as well as your initial teams very well. In this particular case, what I wanted to point out is the reason why the software delivery intelligence on Salesforce, and a lot of folks are in different levels of understanding of what that is because on Salesforce, out of the box, there is no solution. So if you are going to be mapping the software delivery flow and creating a baseline, it would be geared towards creating a manual chart of what it is that you're doing. In terms of software process and these delivery metrics, which every enterprise leader is looking to make a change for, out of the box, there are no DORA metrics. But what you do get are good or no good metrics at the end of the process. And ultimately, it's difficult to action upon these available metrics because all you get is a resultant at the end of the process. So how do you then link that development effort into business value? So it's easy to see where it is you're going right and easy where it is where you're going wrong. But because none of the in-between steps are tracked through, it's very difficult to make changes and improve the velocity and the quality of your development pipeline and what you're looking to achieve and do. And then in this particular instance, Gaurav, can you please explain to us why the software and delivery intelligence really matters?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, V. So I'll introduce myself quickly, and then we'll kind of take a deep dive into software delivery, intelligence, metrics, and more. So my name is Gaurav Kheterpal. I'm a Salesforce MVP Hall of Fame. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem since 2007, or as my wife calls it, I've been married to Salesforce since 2007 because I spent a lot of time on it. And in the software industry for about 25 years. And the reason I bring that up was when I started 25 years back, there was nothing called as software delivery intelligence. There was no measure of metrics. And the paradigm has completely changed in the last 2.5 decades. So over a period of time when DevOps was introduced, it was a nice to have. Software delivery intelligence was also like optional, and some companies started doing it. But today, the landscape has completely changed. These are critical aspects of your development life cycle, and they control key aspects as shown on this slide at the end of the day. And we'll try and demystify and de-jargonize the DORA metrics. But at the end of the day, it's all about these things which are mentioned on this slide. So it's all about efficiency in terms of the delivery process. It's no longer just about having a tool which can replace manual builds with the continuous integration and continuous delivery, but it's a platform. So you are actually plugging holes on any inefficiencies in the overall development life cycle, not just in the build phase as well. Security, and again, we have seen like in today's day and age where security is paramount. There are so many breaches. It's very, very important that you have a DevOps solution which is actually very, very secure. It has compliances as well. So having a DevOps solution itself, like which does basic capabilities, is not enough. You need to have a mature solution which can also qualify as the new term, as they call it, DevSecOps, and also ensure that it is foolproof when it comes to security. Then obviously cost. That is the whole premise of DevOps. Like you want to make sure it's a no-brainer. It's the biggest advantage in play when you use a DevOps platform like Flosum, which is you basically take out the inefficiencies from your development life cycle and try and optimize and reduce the operational costs as well. Then management, it's all about streamlining, as I said, the development life cycle and getting good governance as part of your software development life cycle. Autonomy. So with CI/CD coming in, with automation in your build process and automation in other phases, you are streamlining the development life cycle. There is minimum dependencies in terms of various other roles, and there is a lot more autonomy in play as well. And then innovation, it's all about innovation and how do you make development processes more innovative and efficient with the latest and greatest changes in technology. So I believe that, again, as I said, we will kind of de-jargonize the DORA metrics, but if I were to summarize it, this would be the crux. V, over to you.
And that's perfect. And this really relates to us in terms of what it is that we're trying to accomplish here with Flosum. And then very specifically, where we want to go with the theme today, or the folks that are attending, is how do we get started with the software delivery intelligence? And now that we know all these good things, what is it, and how do we go from here? So where I'd like to really start talking to folks is, everyone is on a little bit of a different journey. And the DORA metrics in DevOps is really this embodiment of changing over from projects into being a product-centric organization. So with DORA metrics, what that is it's called DevOps Research and Assessment, and they develop 4 key metrics. And this is a organization that was sponsored by Google. And what they do is they actually perform and they do surveys and interactions with 30,000 to 50,000 organizations, but just to understand what is the state of affairs that's happening across the organizations and where is everyone in terms of their journey. So these 4 delivery metrics: lead time to change. So it's the time taken for code committed to deployment to production. Deployment frequency: how often do you deploy to production? Change failure rate: what percentage of those deployments require rollback and or hot fixes to be able to actually push into production? And finally, the mean time to restore: how long does it take to restore after a failure in production or a failure moving into production from that no good situation? And these 4 metrics all come together to make a real impact, where, again, really thinking about that product mentality, customer first experience, what this enables the DevOps teams and the folks that are front lines in terms of developing, creating new things relating to development is a shorter time to market, which allows you to do more over a period of time. That enables the product teams and being a customer first mindset, which allows you to have both business agility to then put in the features, functions, and capabilities that will net the most gain for the business and be resilient, especially in times where customer needs and wants are changing, how the business needs to react to external pressures. And this is that foundational step that transitions teams from that project to product mindset and really enables throughout the entire organization to be quick and nimble to react to the things that really matter to the most from your end customer. So Gaurav, I'd like to ask you a quick question about how do you secure buy-in for the idea of measurement in DORA and other metrics?
Absolutely. So as we saw in the poll as well, like there is not enough awareness like about in terms of DORA metrics in general in the industry, and that is unfortunate considering how valuable these are. So and again, to get a management buy-in is not that difficult. Like at the end of the day, as you mentioned, it's all about making the overall development cycle efficient. If you can show the metrics in terms of how they directly relate to the overall development lifecycle efficiency, like your streamlining of your build management process in terms of like build the number of errors that you get in builds being reduced, a very streamlined deployment frequency as well, and some of those other metrics. If you can quantify those as numbers, that definitely justifies justifies the implementation of those metrics. So that is my recommendation. If people on this webinar have never heard about DORA metrics, this is a good start. We don't expect you to become experts on DORA metrics as part of this webinar, but the idea is we want to explain the core concepts to you, and you hopefully understand how critical it is for the overall development life cycle. And again, there is a famous old age saying, which is if you cannot measure it, it's probably not there. So, or you cannot actually you cannot improve it. So it's very, very important. If you want to improve the overall life cycle, software development life cycle for your solution, you have to measure the efficiency of your, not just your DevOps process, but other processes as well.
And I think I heard something really interesting is how you would approach the implementation of this is really starting to think about benchmarking. And then what we're going to do here is we'll drop in a chat here where we have something called a DORA report, where we have evaluated where everyone is in terms of industry. So you can actually take a look here and understand at the highest level where different folks are. And as you get more exposed to these DORA metrics, really figure out where you are on that journey. So we'll drop that into the conversation piece, and we'll package that up afterwards, where you can take this with other folks that might be within your company who might be exposed to these, just to see where you are along your journey towards getting software delivery intelligence. So
absolutely. Just one more thing which I want to add, and you brought up a great point in terms of benchmarking it. So again, your organizational benchmarks may be slightly different from the industry benchmarks, but the overall idea is that you measure it and then you manage it. And a typical approach would be like to do bottoms up. You start off with the engineers and you kind of identify what are the pain points, and then build your metrics around those. So that would be one of the good approaches in terms of how you implement this.
And then everyone loves a good benchmark, just to understand where you are in the scope of the entire industry and how much effort you have to be putting into this. Is this top of mind? Is this something nice to have? Or are you already a leader in terms of what you're attempting to accomplish? And then this leads us into the next conversation, where it's really important for everyone on this call to understand, hey, perhaps I don't have the exposure to these DORA metrics or software delivery intelligence. I think it's important for us to educate on how to get started. And Gaurav, just I'd like to ask you is, what's the deal with Salesforce DORA metrics and tooling and software intelligence delivery metrics?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been fortunate enough to kind of follow the evolution of Salesforce in Salesforce tooling, as well as in general in terms of the DevOps offering, all the various players, as well as the latest solution from Salesforce, which is DevOps Center. And then again, there is a whole gamut of open source tools as well. But there is, again, open source always comes at a cost. So there are a number of considerations in play. It all depends on the kind of use case that you have and how simple or how complex the solution is. So DevOps Center, it's a great start by Salesforce, but again, it's a very new product. It has its own maturity limitations. It is also limited by the fact that GitHub is the only source control that is supported. So if you are on something which is non-GitHub, then obviously you need to look at other options as well. And then since the product itself, since DevOps Center is in an infancy stage, or it's very early days, so the level of developer productivity and the code quality that you get out of DevOps Center is fairly basic, and which would suffice for like small projects. But if you are, as I said, like looking for an enterprise grade project with lots of complexities, it's probably not a good fit. And again, the other big limitation is there are no integrations in terms of third-party testing tools that you can integrate. Open source, on the other hand, the other challenge that typically with open source is like in terms of support, in terms of compliance, which if you are dealing in a sensitive industry like financial services, or if you're working in public sector, those are big considerations here. If you don't check those boxes, your solution will never get approved. So that's where open source struggles. So the thought process there is you cannot really use tools for specific use cases. You need something which is a little bit more elaborate, which is like a core platform. And again, with Flosum, I actually discovered a few strengths. Like again, in terms of maturity, the product has been around for a long time. It is secure as well, and I believe there are a number of compliances as well, which attest to the fact that from a cybersecurity point of view as well, it's fairly comprehensive. Version control, very comprehensive capabilities in terms of typical developer functionality that they would need in terms of source control and using the repo as the source of truth. So code reviews, branch management, org merges, and a number of quality gates as well. Developer productivity, which is the number one priority for any developer. So whether it is scanning your Apex code, whether it is scanning your metadata, which by the way is very few tools do that, and the ability to preview and deploy and with external tooling like Selenium, that is a huge boost in terms of automating some of the QA as well. And then integrations, as I said, the more flexibility you have in terms of being able to integrate with different systems like Git, Azure, AWS, or project management tools or ticket management tools, the better it is. So in that sense, like Flosum checks most of the boxes. Again, I'm not saying that the other tools do not do that, but again, there are pros and cons, and it all comes down to the use case. But if you need to get into a scenario where you need all of these, then Flosum is a good platform that you should consider.
And then that's a great point that you bring up. So very clear, Salesforce and Salesforce DevOps Center do not provide software intelligence delivery metrics out of the box. Open source definitely do. What the challenges are there is that you have to configure the scripts and how it's being reported. So you're going to be responsible around the reporting, making sure the pipelines are there. And then to what Gaurav said is open source is an amazing place to start. The challenge becomes staffing and expertise to making sure that works. And then as everyone on this conversation knows that, hey, Salesforce development is its own little challenge to be overcoming. The biggest challenges in terms of going towards open source is the fact that you have to factor in the cost to build, the time lost in terms of, hey, is the business valuing and really giving you enough budget to be able to manage these open source projects appropriately, or are they really focusing you on being able to deliver value to your end customers? Challenges around adoption. Typically, the tooling is not available for declarative developers or admins to be able to get into there, or management, so you will be owning a lot of the reporting and the capabilities there. So the biggest challenges that we find in terms of industry is everyone loves and needs to get started with open source tools. to start giving you the power and the leverage of DevOps when it comes towards Salesforce. Where it really, the game changer happens is when you want to transition your entire enterprise and get multiple teams, multiple sets of folks, and standardize how you're reporting, understand from an organizational standpoint, how do you think about software delivery, and how do you take your team, not one team, but how do you take your wider Salesforce development team and take the same steps together? So where what we find is what are the challenges in terms of the industry, and then Gaurav really put it into really simple words that everyone can understand, right? The platform context matters. These open source tools and a lot of other tools are not built around the Salesforce ecosystem. And Gaurav said some of the major things, metadata, having the context of the challenges that you're undergoing, being able to manage multiple sets of folks, whether it's admins, declarative developers, or very serious low-level developers that are doing architecture. How do you get everyone working together? And then finally, some of the challenges with Salesforce is the fact that you can make changes live in production, and that needs to be picked up. So these are the challenges that we're finding that our developers or folks that come to us are having these issues. Version control, as mentioned, and ease of use for citizen developers. Salesforce is a great platform that can enable many portions of your organization and have an outsized impact. So this creates challenges with traditional developers all working together in the same environment. You really need to make it into a similar platform where everyone can use it, and having that flexibility for everyone and bring all these teams together to create that governance and risk and compliance and that process that really allows you to have an impact to the business and to your end customer. So at the end of the day, Gaurav, based off of your understanding and your deep experience with Salesforce, can you give us some examples about leading an organization around that transition from project to product and DevOps, and how you were able to talk to the business about the value of putting in DevOps?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was one of my most complex projects in my 16-year journey with Salesforce, and it was for a leading investment bank. This was obviously in the financial services domain, and a really complex program which actually spread across multiple years. And when it started, obviously it started without any DevOps, and processes were a little bit not very streamlined, a lot of manual processes as well. And then we were kind of forced to do it because, again, the financial industry works with very, very strict regulations. There are strict compliances around everything. If you have to do a deployment, there are a number of checklist items that you need to check off. Each release in itself is like a mini project because there are multiple stakeholders, and this was a large investment bank, so we had to get sign-offs from a number of stakeholders as well. And if you are trying to do that with like basic tooling capability, which is like change sets, or even with DevOps Center, it will absolutely not work. And God forbid, if anything goes wrong and you do not have a solid rollback strategy, which you get as part of an enterprise grade CI/CD platform like Flosum, the stakes there are very, very high. Like an investment bank, which is using and doing a deployment, which is potentially dealing with millions of dollars every minute. The stakes there are very, very high. So in that sense, like having an enterprise DevOps platform, and not just that, again, being able to measure the metrics around your software delivery intelligence, it's very, very important, because if that is not happening, then it's a massive risk, and it's a single point of failure. So financial services cloud, again, as an industry, and there are others as well, which I said earlier, but that example comes to my mind because we not only saw the value in terms of introducing an enterprise platform like Flosum, but we were also able to measure it, which was really good for us, as well as we could actually share those insights and analytics with the stakeholders. And since then, the program has also gone on and moved on to the next level. So in that sense, it's critical and something that you cannot avoid.
Gaurav, and I think I heard something really critical for everyone to be and completely understanding that DevOps is not a tool. It's really a process. And when you have an enterprise application around DevOps, it really helps create that map and that journey for everyone. Do you remember a time where everyone has complex requirements, all of these compliance requirements. Mapping it out, doing it manually compared to being able to have it automated. Do you remember how much headache did that save for the organization? Or did everyone understand at the end, just being like, wow, what I thought was complex actually ended up being simpler? Did you ever have any of those moments during the project?
Oh yes, absolutely, many times. And again, I think you rightly said it's not just about like having a tool. It's more about the process and a comprehensive platform which can do that. But again, like I've had my own struggle with some of the native capabilities in terms of deployments and release management. So having a tool which automates a lot of those capabilities and which takes away the pain, and again coupled with these metrics, which allows me to measure how well we are doing or what is the level of efficiency gained, that is gold.
Mm-hmm. And then in this case, and I think what everyone's talking about like is right now, especially with the current state of the economics in the world, is basically, anything I do, there needs to be an ROI associated with it. Something that you've learned in terms of your journey, how do you create or justify your ROI with the business side of what it is that you're looking to do, right? So in this financial industry, for example, did you understand before and after in terms of the velocity of the team or the quality, or how did you go about constructing that business case with the multiple stakeholders, not necessarily your team who's evaluating it technically, but with the business?
Yeah, so a number of metrics, and again, it goes back to the earlier discussion as well. It's all about ROI and how you can measure it. So one of the typical criteria, if you are doing deployments, is just in case, as I said, if things go wrong, like mean time to recover or mean time to restore services. There were instances where obviously we did deployments, and when it was manual or when it was being done through the native tooling, it did take us a while to kind of recover the services. We were able to do that. There is absolutely no denial in that, but it did take us a while. And the cost of that period, which was lost in terms of restoring the services back, was huge. So again, having a platform which can do that quickly is very, very important. And then the other was, and again, the requirements are always changing, and we know that each release brings in its own complexities, and sometimes there are changes which are not exactly backward compatible. So having a tool which can actually detect that early in the life cycle, as they say, every bug that you avoid is every bug fixed. So having those kind of metrics in terms of the overall number of issues being reported late in the life cycle, that going down was again a metric that we use to kind of justify the investment in the tool. So those are some examples in terms of how we were able to justify the tool and how it actually helped save us as well.
I'm also hearing something really interesting come out of that story, is how happy everyone was working with Salesforce development during release cycles. One of the main things that I hear quite often is some of the production releases or the release times, they're actually done with the expectation that it'll be 2-3 days of working on the bug fixes. So I think a lot of folks are thinking that, hey, this is normal, this is regular. But putting a process around it, having enterprise-grade applications helps reduce the stress that everyone can potentially feel from doing these releases, and really multiplies the value that you can generate, because you're not going back and reworking things that should have been done already, or repackaging, which sometimes takes a full day or 2 days to be able to do another release.
Absolutely, it's all about risk mitigation as well as ensuring that the stakeholders actually, that the executive stakeholders actually see the value in it. So if you can do that, then that's actually a win, not just for the release management team or the overall software development team, but for the business as a whole as well. So,
all right, perfect. So now we'll transition with Andrew. We'll be doing some questions and answers, or Q&A that folks have been asking. One of the first questions that have come in is, Andrew, do you want to take the questions?
Yeah, thanks, Vic. Yeah, I'm more than happy to go through the questions. So yeah, one of the so actually, before we jump into the questions, I just really want to urge everyone to click through the link for the free DORA report that you guys are offering. I mean, just to see kind of the state of play that it is within your organization, I think it's just such a useful tool that I urge everyone to take advantage of it. Right, yes, so on to the questions. So the first one, speaking of the DORA report, is what is a potential challenge or pitfall managers might face when attempting to implement DORA or other software delivery metrics?
So I can take that. So I think if I go by my experience, I think I won't say the pitfall, but one of the challenges that you'll face early in the life cycle when you're adopting the metrics is how do you measure it, and if it's really worth doing so. And it's a natural question which comes up because it's a change in terms of how you are doing certain processes, and that is completely expected. But as I said, once you get past that, once you streamline your processes, once you have well-defined processes in terms of these are the metrics which we want to measure, this is how we'll measure it, and then it becomes a part of your regular life cycle, then it's no longer a challenge. But I think initially it's more of a process-oriented challenge rather than a tool-oriented challenge. And once you overcome that, then it becomes a part of, like, you're just doing CI/CD, you're doing some of the other things in terms of production deployments. Measurement of those metrics also becomes a part of your life cycle as well. Anything you want to add?
That's perfect. That's a great answer.
Amazing. Thank you, Gaurav. Right, the next question we've got is a common issue companies face can often be insufficient buy-in. How can it affect your initiative, and how can you address this?
I'm not really sure if I understood. Can you repeat the question for me one more time?
Yeah, sorry. So a common issue faced by companies is insufficient buy-in around DevOps solutions in general. So how can it affect your initiative not having this buy-in, and what are some ways that we can address this?
Yeah, so if you're not doing like a DevOps, like you are sitting on a heap of operational inefficiencies, if you are still doing everything manually, like those are Stone Age principles of software development. As I said, when I started 25 years back, there was nothing called DevOps. There was no talk about such metric measurement as well. I think the only metric that measured back then was code quality, which still is very, very important for today. But again, software development life cycle itself has changed. So I think the metrics kind of speak to itself, the value that you generate and the ROI that you get as part of implementing a platform, DevOps platform like Flosum, as well as how you can measure those metrics, I think speaks for itself. And again, if, as I said, you can quantify it based on a number of factors, like how much efficiency it is leading in terms of your release management, what is the number of bugs that you are saving per release. Those are some of the metrics. And as I said, it's the big challenge is like getting it done for the first time. But once the executive management sees the value in it, I think it should not be that big of a deal.
Amazing. All right, moving on to the next question. What is truly realistic when it comes to app delivery measurement expectations, especially in the beginning?
Yeah, so some of the things that, as I said, you can measure is the number of bugs. So it's actually a good metric to do anyway, regardless of whether you are capturing all the other metrics as well, because it actually gives you an idea of the code quality in terms of how mature your builds are. It also tells you like if there are like builds which do not have a high number of bugs, then typically you would not need to kind of roll back features, and that is a good metric as well. And there's a question I think in the chat as well, but I think that's another one. So very often, like we all mess up things, like deployments happen, but a feature doesn't work as expected. So very often we actually do patch releases as well, or hot fixes as well. So again, the number of hot fixes that you need to do after every major release, that can also be a valuable metric in terms of measuring the overall state measuring the overall quality of your deliverables as well. So, and again, depending on the use case, and there is no one size fits all approach here. An organization could choose like just deployment frequency as one of the key metrics, but any other organization could also choose a different metric as well. So DORA is a set of metrics, and it is a set of guidelines, which is prescriptive enough, but at the same time, there is a lot of flexibility in terms of what you actually want to choose for your specific use case.
Perfect. And a quick follow-up to that. Do you think DORA metrics fully represent things like engineering outcomes?
I wouldn't say that. Like, I think, as I said, like code quality in terms of the number of bugs is probably not represented as part of DORA metrics. So it's a subset of the overall software delivery metrics, but it's a subset which has been ignored for long. So specifically around the DevOps and the release management aspect. So I would say that it's definitely not exhaustive in terms of the overall the overall metrics that you can capture. Because like there are a lot of things, other things that you can do, number of user stories as well, number of defects logged per user story, number of major deployments, number of minor deployments, number of hot fixes that were done. So some of it is measured by DORA metrics, but not all of it. So I would say it's definitely a subset of the overall metrics.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Gaurav. Right. The next question is a little bit touching on the DevOps Center in Salesforce. So how do we use Flosum in DevOps Center in Salesforce? And how long does it take to add on the DevOps Center into Salesforce itself?
I actually that out. So
I can tackle that one, Gaurav. So that was the question. So it's not part of DevOps Center, so it's in a different app. So I created a link here on our Q&A in terms of where you can get started and how you can get started with understanding how Flosum can give you these metrics.
Amazing, thanks, V. Right, the next question is just around some metrics. What is the industry average for DORA metrics?
So we have here so what we've done is we've compared it to, and then somebody was asking for a sample slide from metrics state to state. So here we have a sample of how this looks like. If you select your industry, we can get into a little bit more granular and detailed metrics. But this is from the Google State of DevOps survey each year, and then we have the capability of going into each industry where we can take you on a journey of understanding of where you are and how you can get there with Flosum and being a Flosum high performer. Sometimes, depending on the different industry that you're in, for example, financial services, where there's a high degree of regulation, the averages around each of these different four metrics is different. So it's really about baselining the DORA metrics for what makes sense for your business. So we have Flosum experts who can fill in this the report here and create actionable results with a proof of concept and take the next steps with you together on how you can achieve what your goals are.
Perfect, thank you, V. Right, the next question we've got is, how important is the standard to adhere to versus focusing on your own internal organization goals?
I think that this is really a point in time where you can take a look at what your functional goals are and belaying it back to industry average. If you understand that your peers are able to do twice as many or 3 times as many releases in the same time as somebody else is, I think this is absolutely critical for you to be able to understand and how this can potentially put some of the competitive disadvantages for your organization. So it's really about having a conversation leading the conversation with the business and explaining what the challenges are that are being faced in the wider industry to make sure that you are competitive from that perspective.
Awesome, thank you, V. Cool, we've got an interesting question here. So it's around the DevOps Center roadmap. in that a lot of the things that Flosum identifies as an advantage compared to DevOps Center are on the DevOps roadmap itself. And how will Flosum continue to provide the value compared to DevOps Center once those things are rolled out through the roadmap?
I think this is a very valid question, and thank you for asking it. So the value that Flosum delivers is here and now. We're here to support customers and their capabilities. We've expanded our abilities with the Flosum platform a little bit more so into the security side, the DevSecOps side, as well as really in-depth capabilities associated with things that all matter. So metadata analysis, being able to compare, contrast, all these things which require quite a bit of development time and effort. So where we are in terms of that journey and where DevOps Center will end up, I think is more of a question for the Salesforce development team. I think the roadmap is very ambitious, and what we're aiming to do is fill the need for enterprises that are here today. If you were to take a look at how much time and effort is saved by being able to have all the functionality today as opposed to 2, 3 years or 5 years from now, I think is really a critical conversation to be had. I know that everyone is really looking to evaluate how you can use free in the best manner possible, but how will that impact your business and how will that impact your processes if you were to go back in time and in processes without having the industry best tooling capabilities? So it's more of an individual journey question depending on the complexity and the size of your use cases. And I would encourage everyone to really evaluate and think deeply about, hey, where do I play? How big is my team? What are the complexities I manage? And what are the set of characters that have to use this tool to be the most effective? We're really an enterprise-grade solution. We can help different folks along different journeys. And we're really there to help bring everyone together and have the best capabilities possible in terms of DevOps on Salesforce. Gaurav, maybe do you have a different perspective on this?
Yeah, just a couple of points I want to add. So I think the question also compares like the Flosum licensing cost versus GitHub licensing and 15x. So one thing, just to make it clear, like Flosum and GitHub is an apples versus oranges comparison. Like one is a source control or a version control tool, and then Flosum is an end-to-end release management platform. So that comparison is a little bit unfair. And then DevOps Center, I think I'm glad you brought up the roadmap. Salesforce did a really good job in terms of publishing it for public. It's on the GitHub repo as well, and I've actually been tracking it since DevOps Center was in beta. So lots of features planned on the roadmap, and I'm sure like in terms of maturity, the solution will get better in the next couple of years as well. But like, what is the stopgap arrangement that you have? Like, if you already have like a complex enterprise grade project that you are currently running, and especially in an industry where, as I said, the stakes in terms of release management and in general in DevOps are high, would you just wait for a couple of years to save on the licensing cost so that there is and mind you, there is also a catch that DevOps Center, currently it is actually being offered for free, but I do not know for sure. And again, I'll have to double check the roadmap as well. But there is obviously a free tier as with the number of Salesforce products as well. But I'm not really sure that all the features that are being advertised on DevOps Center will actually be free going forward as well. So it really all depends on the kind of project complexity that you have, the kind of use cases you have. As I said, DevOps Center is great for very, very simple, short projects with small teams. But at any point of time, if you talk about something bigger or something a little bit more complex, you definitely need to look for another solution to minimize your risk.
And then one final suggestion is that we both have a certification course, and you can get started with Flosum without needing to refresh your sandboxes. So it's very open, the capability of getting started. You can reach out to us, and we're really here about getting people both educated and started on that DevOps journey. So any type of questions, we can reach out to us, myself, or anybody on the Flosum team, and we're here to help everyone get started and perform the best that they can in terms of their DevOps and release management process.
Amazing, thanks, guys. One thing I think I'd just like to add on that as well is around kind of the usability of Flosum compared to DevOps Center. Especially for myself, I've tried out both. From more of an admin background, I found Flosum more intuitive to use, which I think is a really big positive, because I think especially for admins that may be new to a DevOps experience, having that sort of usability is really important, where where they can kind of hit the ground running with it and make the most of it without getting too distracted or confused with what's going on in the tool. So I think that's really, really important as well. Cool. We've got one last question, just around what kind of releases do you suggest using Flosum for?
Oh, this is a really great one. So Flosum is adaptable to your release process. So we have a huge degree, and Andrew, I believe that this is what you're mentioning, we have a huge degree of customizability where we can change to your specific releasing, branching capabilities and what you're looking to do with your team. We can create these, we can really fit it like a glove depending on what it is that you're doing, and we just make it very easy to merge different branches and releases together and push it into production. So I definitely recommend here, and then we'll drop in a little into the chat here as we're finishing off about a certification on how you get started and learning a little bit more about Flosum. But this has been an amazing conversation with everyone. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to me and the Flosum team, Gaurav as well, and we can definitely point you with the right resources and get you started on your journey towards understanding software delivery intelligence to the level that is required for you guys.
Amazing, thanks for that, Vee. Right, yeah, there's no more questions, so I think that's all she wrote for today. Like I said at the start of the webinar, we'll be sending an email out after this with a link to be able to rewatch it. Like Vee said, if you've got any questions that come to your mind later on, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to answer them. But Gaurav and Vee, thank you so much for joining me in this discussion today. And yeah, we'll leave it there.
All right, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.